Hey there, everyone. Fox, Samir Hamadash, Shay Tough. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Shay, Samir are here from FCSB Forest City SynBio. We're going to be discussing their latest raise on the backers platform and everything that has to do with SynBio in a few seconds. So stay tuned. And I am just sending some stuff out here, but welcome back. All right, everyone there. Let's see if we can get this. So, hey, Samir, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, perfect. We're just getting it. Yeah. Thanks for joining me today. So let's talk a little bit about Forest City SynBio or FCSB. You guys are live raising funds on the backers platform through our great partners, 108 Securities Inc. Tell us a little bit about FCSB and what is SynBio? What is synthetic biology? I guess. Tell us a little bit about that. Or you know what? Let's take a step back. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? We'll start with Samir because you're right next to me, and then we'll go with Shay. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure, yeah. So Shay and I both come from a science background. I studied genetics and biochemistry at Western University, and that's where I became introduced to synthetic biology. It's kind of the next generation of biotech. Got involved with the community, helped to create a nonprofit called SynBio Canada. So that works a lot with academics and students trying to support the community, connect people, and bring more awareness to the field in Canada. And through that role, I got to meet a lot of people who are either founders of synthetic biology startups or wanted to become founders. And they run into a lot of problems. And so Forest City SynBio was started first as a volunteer initiative. So Shay and I were volunteers along with a few other students and recent grads, just trying to understand the ecosystem, the challenges that founders face, and what we could do to help them. And then last year, we incorporated as a for-profit, and I'll save talking about the business for after Shay intros herself.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. As Samir mentioned, we met in our undergrad. So I studied genetics, and then I went back for a postgrad program in clinical trials management. So my bulk of my experience is more on the biopharma side of things, working in consulting for a few years in clinical trials management. But as Samir mentioned, got involved with Forest City SynBio back when I was a volunteer organization. And my intro into SynBio was really with part of a academic kind of pitch competition. And that's where I also got to meet hundreds of academic teams and scientists who were like entrepreneurial minded and really trying to use these engineered biology products to solve a real world problem. And we went to this conference and there's like hundreds of teams around me, and all of them were all trying to like make these massive impacts in the world. And so many of them just like died after academia. Like none of them ever pursued becoming a startup. So it was really like when I was brought into FCSB from Samir as a volunteer organization, it was like, this just makes sense. Like this is what all of these students need. They need the extra push. They need the support. Like we'll talk about how there's such unique needs for SynBio startups getting off the ground. So yeah, I took the leap of faith into entrepreneurship to pursue it.
Interesting. So yes, I mean, obviously with backers, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So respect and appreciate you guys taking that leap and jumping into it. So why don't we touch on, and obviously that, entrepreneurs in every field need a lot of support. But why don't we touch on a little bit about what sort of specifically, obviously, I think you left it, the cliffhanger there, Samir, what synthetic biology is, and then talk to us a little bit about, how it impacts the world. And then I'd probably leave the question so we can kind of give both of you guys an opportunity to answer. Shay, why don't you talk a little bit about the business model? We'll get into that with FCSB and sort of how you guys plan to support the entrepreneurs. So I think we'll start with Samir. Talk to a little bit about what synthetic biology is, why it's important, and then we'll get into the next part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So synthetic biology in a lot of ways is just sort of the next step of biotechnology. So since the 50s, we've known a lot about DNA and about how to manipulate it. Now we're at a point where we can write it from scratch. We can edit it with a lot of precision, very easily, very cheaply. So we have so much more control now over the information that underlies living systems. And what biology is really good at, so the same way we use zeros and ones to program computers to move around bits of information, we can use the 4 letters of DNA, A, C, G, and T, to move around atoms and essentially hack the physical world, chemistry. Organisms are very good at doing chemistry and doing it very efficiently. So this opens the door to producing products, things like high-value chemicals, like biofuels or flavor ingredients, things like materials, medicine. We could produce these things now in a scalable way that's much cheaper, much easier, and much more sustainable for the environment. So that's really the big advantage here, is that we can use biology to produce these products from things like greenhouse gases or things like plastic waste, or even so we can produce it in ways that are remediative for the environment, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions and producing them in a way that's more resilient. So with COVID, we saw that food security is a big issue, and now we can produce food in a way that's not affected by the climate, not affected by geopolitics, is much more distributed and decentralized. So the impacts are really broad. It's predicted by McKinsey that 45% of the global disease burden can be eliminated through synthetic biology. 60% of all inputs into the economy, all material inputs, are going to be derived from biology by 2040. And it's going to reduce 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. So compared to 2018 levels, that's about a few times the airline industry. And it's going to create $4 trillion of economic impact again by 2040. So massive opportunity. And so now you have this critical mass of entrepreneurs, companies, and investors who are taking interest. And especially after the pandemic, now you also have governments that are investing heavily into advancing biomanufacturing, investing in cellular agriculture, and all of these ways to take advantage of biological engineering.
Cool. Awesome. So obviously it's sort of the evolution of biology, right? Where you're stepping into synthetic biology, like your video states, is it life created by life? No, what is
yeah,
what is
so
the tag?
Our slogan is life improved by life.
Life improved by life. Sorry.
Because we can engineer life and use it to improve the lives of people, as well as animals, plants, and other creatures. And in a way, we're alive and we're using biology, we're engineering it. So it kind of has that double meaning to it.
Right.
But my favorite was in my podcast with Andrew Hessel, the way he put it was, this is really the most powerful technology ever to exist. And it's because we didn't create it, it's what created us. So truly that paradigm shift where for the last, 3.5 billion years, life has been evolving in this non-directed way, just by natural selection and other natural mechanisms. And now humans can introduce design, introduce intentionality, and introduce a creative element into producing new organisms.
Cool. So it's literally like engineering life, right? You guys are engineering life.
Yeah, for useful applications that will benefit society, benefit the environment, benefit biodiversity, and so on.
Exactly. So okay. So let's jump into. So obviously, we see the value or the importance of synthetic biology. So why don't we talk, Shay? Talk to us a little bit about what FCSB or Forest City SynBio specifically, what your goal is. Obviously, you talked about working with and your experience, kind of at the event where you saw teams of people and kind of it all fizzled out a little bit. Maybe that's not what you said exactly, but that's how I summarize it, right? And so, how do so obviously you have that vision of expanding sort of the educational aspect and the early kind of entries into things and sort of commercializing it or figuring out how that can be expanded. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how FCSB facilitates that, or what it is you guys exactly do?
Yeah, for sure. So our business model revolves around three prongs, and it really is based off of what we discovered during our time as a volunteer group were the most needed resources that these startups need. And the first one's lab space. So it's not like a traditional app or tech startup. When you're dealing with biology, it's complex and you need a lab in order to do all of your experiments. And lab space is extremely expensive, especially in Canada. It's really hard to come by outside of academia or private labs that cost an arm and a leg. And these are early stage startups that might not have that overhead. So FCSB provides lab space for these startups, as well as mentorship. So there's an ecosystem support that these entrepreneurs need. Like Canada is not the Valley right now, right? So lots of the entrepreneurs that we were talking with, they would just leave Canada or leave after they graduate schools. They have great ideas. They leave the country in order to get that support that they needed to start their business. And so FCSB is trying to build, we have a network of investors, anything from marketing, legal, business, anything that's teaching these scientific founders how to be an entrepreneur and how to have confidence in their leadership and building a startup as a whole. And then the last one is capital. So right now we're offering a small pre-seed investment to these startups, and it's largely to allow them to work on their startups full time, to take that leap of faith. And what the ultimate goal is our business model revolves around taking all of these proof of concepts that we're developing right now. So having our first lab that just opened up, being able to offer getting equity from our side in these startups at the very earliest stage, and then also developing our programming and educational support for the founders that will all lead into a comprehensive accelerator program. So we have a smaller lab right now. The ultimate goal is to open up a 7,000 square foot lab that's currently under development in London, Ontario. So Southwestern Ontario is the place where we're located. And when that lab opens up, we would have a full cohort-based program as well as an investment fund that invest into these startups that creates kind of a diversified portfolio from FCSB's side of these amazing emerging technologies all under one roof.
Cool. We're just going to take a quick, short commercial break, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk to Samir. Commercial break back. All right. It's like we're on a live broadcast here. Okay, cool. So tell us, Samir, what are your thoughts? Like, where do you see synthetic biology going, obviously, and what is your goal over the next kind of 1 to 3 to 5 years with FCSB? Like, what are some of the maybe milestones where you guys see what you're doing and some of the things that you're hoping to see come through with some of the organizations that are going to be utilizing your facility or facilities or, all of your capabilities?
Yeah, so right now the big areas are biomanufacturing and cellular agriculture. So biomanufacturing is kind of what I described earlier, where essentially the same way we've been making beer and bread and yogurt for centuries using fermentation, we now engineer microbes to use fermentation to produce things that we've engineered them to produce. So those could be materials, flavors, etc. And essentially, to give an example of how that works, if you wanted to produce peppermint flavor, for instance, rather than growing peppermint plants, which have a lot of challenges associated with that, you can take the genes that the peppermint plant contains for production of those flavors, and you put those genes into yeast or bacteria, and then you can ferment the flavor ingredient the same way you would make yogurt. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit right now is in that application of biomanufacturing, precision fermentation, some people call it. Cellular
no pun intended, right? Low-hanging fruit, sort of the yeah, no.
No unintended, but yeah.
No unintended, okay.
And then cellular agriculture is essentially producing agricultural products like meat, cereal crops, things like that, grains. Instead of using the whole animal or the whole plant, you use the cells that produce the components that you want. So the big application is producing meat. So a lot of companies now are taking essentially you take a small sample of cells from a cow or a chicken or whatever organism you want, and you grow it up in a vat in a bioreactor. And so you're producing just that tissue that we're going to be consuming at the end of the day, which is the meat tissue. And then you use a 3D bioprinter to layer it out into whatever form you want, whether it's a fillet or a steak. So that allows us to produce meat in a way that's much cheaper, much better for the environment, not harming animals, using far less water, far less land. And if you just think about the food chain, think about how much food a cow needs to eat and waste it produces just for you to get a little cut of steak, rather than just producing the meat, and all of the inputs go directly to the meat that you're eating and nothing else. So just in principle, there's no reason not to expect that this is going to be much cheaper, much more affordable for consumers, much healthier, much better for the planet, etc. And then there's sort of smaller scale cellular agriculture, where instead of producing something as complicated as animal cells, you can produce components of food. So you have, for example, Perfect Day that's making dairy by essentially taking milk genes and producing that in yeast. There's another company called New Culture. They're making cheese. There's companies that are making eggs and so on. So there's a lot of different things that we can produce now without raising livestock. But where I think this is all going, in the academic side, we're now developing really advanced tools that, for instance, you can create entire genomes from scratch now. So a lot of the current applications of synthetic biology involve a small number of genes, simple organisms like bacteria and yeast. But now we're seeing entire genomes being created in the lab. We're going to start working with animals and plants, and going to create much more complicated things, like people talk about creating sort of architecture using trees or modified trees to have them grow into different structures. So that's a big area. Another big area is combining different species, different organisms into multi-species systems. So for example, something that is a big area of research right now is taking organisms and turning them into parts of other organisms. So the same way we have gut bacteria that live inside us, and we have a symbiotic relationship with those gut bacteria, you can create those systems like that, where you have one organism living inside of another organism and creating a symbiotic relationship with them. So one application of that, for example, is being able to produce plants that don't need fertilizer, because you put an organism inside of them that produces the fertilizer for them. So it's things like that where it's getting a bit more sophisticated. And then obviously the big moonshot that a lot of people are working on is asking questions about how do we terraform Mars? How do we take what we know about engineering biology and create organisms and ecosystems that can turn a barren planet like Mars into a thriving blue planet like Earth? And you can just think about how there was no oxygen in the atmosphere on Earth, no O2, until biology evolved a way to produce it using photosynthesis and convert the entire atmosphere to being one that was primarily carbon dioxide and nitrogen to one that contains enough oxygen to sustain aerobic organisms. So when you look at a planet like Mars, where its atmosphere is massively carbon dioxide heavy, we could use photosynthesis to turn it into something more hospitable to human life.
Interesting. This is just sort of a side note, and I know we've talked about this in the past, and I think Shay has kind of answered it. So, and I'll come at this from a different sort of perspective. So the average person used to sort of see like GMO and sort of genetically modified and things of that nature, right? And it was very negatively viewed, right? And obviously, I think the early days, what would you say, and this is sort of for Shay, or either of you can answer this, what would you say to somebody who says, are we going too far? Or like, what's the, what is the gray area? Where's the line being crossed? Or like, because I'm sure this is a heavily, and I mean, you can answer this any way you want, so don't think, but this is obviously a heavily debated area, right? Like, what are your thoughts on kind of how do we as a society kind of evaluate, where is that line, or what are the certain areas that we're willing to explore, right? Like, creating, let's just call it beef, from, a microbe versus, raising cattle, as you sort of stated, versus, something that maybe would be a far more extreme. Like what are your thoughts on that? And, what is the difference between the GMO kind of genetically modified organisms and what's actually happening now? I don't know. We'll leave that to Shay, I guess, can start. I know you and I have talked a little bit about it, maybe even on a live stream in the past. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I can touch on it from a high level of kind of, first of all, I guess, all GMOs, and we're talking about engineering life. So there's a huge deal of responsibility and ethical consideration that needs to go into every single thing that we're doing. And all of the startups that we work with, that is top of mind, no matter what anybody is working on. So that's extremely important to consider just from the get-go. And I think that the old way of looking at GMOs of this is bad for you, this is kind of, it's scary. A lot of people consider GMOs as being extremely scary. I think there is a shift right now in the public and in the scientific world where it's less about engineering organisms that become scary and more about engineering organisms to provide value for what we need, right? So it becomes not necessarily
so it's not bigger red or tomatoes just for consumer.
Exactly.
It's more like what is the value of bigger red or tomatoes?
These are global problems that startups are solving. Like climate change isn't going anywhere. Like waste management isn't going anywhere. Food security. How are we going to feed 10 billion people by 2050, right? Like there needs to be these novel solutions that are carefully crafted and creating a product, whether that be a food ingredient or it becomes a sustainable fuel source that our world can use in order to survive. It's basically survival mode, right? And we can't wait until something like a pandemic comes along and introduces to us that, hey, like the mRNA vaccine, that's synthetic biology. So nobody knew what SynBio was until all of a sudden now there's, this is like obviously a wide debate as well, but like SynBio offered a solution for that problem. And that's, in our eyes, we're betting on an industry that is going to continuously do that for the environment, for humanity. There's going to be new problems that are arising, and SynBio is going to be able to accessibly, cheaply, and environmentally friendly solve those problems for us.
It's interesting you mentioned 10 billion because I was just reading a book to one of my sons last night from 2000, and the population it stated, and I don't know like the truth of this, was 5.5 billion. So in just 22 years, we've gone from 5.5 to I think 7.5, right? So add another 22 years, we're going to go another 2.5 or 2 billion, right? I mean, exponentially. So we're going to get to 10 pretty quickly. So interesting. So, I mean, yeah, you touched on a lot of things. Obviously, ethics are a major player in this. There's obviously a lot of people, question, even the mRNA, and, it's early days, right? I mean, I think you guys would admit, and a lot of people admit, it is still early days in a lot of this, right? And there's a lot more research, a lot more studies that need to be done, in all aspects, right? In continuing. So where do you guys see, how do you see FCSB sort of and Forest City SynBio fitting into that, supporting entrepreneurs? I know you talked about your programs, but like, what are some of the things that you guys are going to implement to really bring in the best of the best, or how do you see yourselves doing that?
Mm-hmm. So we have a bit of a funnel that helps us to identify those, the best of the best. So it kind of starts with our founder network, which is a virtual community where entrepreneurs can have some peer mentorship as well as connect with ourselves and our mentor network. And then from there, there's also then the incubator where startups can just use our lab space with a rental model, and that sort of gives them the opportunity to do a little bit of validation. And then at the end of the funnel is the investment where we provide that pre-seed capital. So those, we're kind of watching the startups along the way. So for instance, right now we're in the process of making our first investment into a team that we've been working with closely for about a year now. So it's a bit of a process where we're doing a lot of due diligence, a lot of mentoring of the founders to make sure that they're ready and that we believe they're committed and capable of doing what they'd like to do. And then in terms of what we're providing to them, so Shay mentioned, lab space, funding and educational programming. And really what it is we want to accelerate their growth. So they're going to come in at a very early stage where they perhaps have a little bit of validation. Maybe they're spinning something out of grad school or They've been working on it for a bit, and they want to develop their first proof of concept. And what we're going to do is provide them with a very fast-paced environment where they're going to get access to all the people they need, all the resources they need, all the mentorship they need to very quickly go from idea to business plan, have the right connections in place to develop that business plan and materialize it. Ideally, at the end of our pre-accelerator program, which is kind of where we're operating right now, we're going to help them get into another stage accelerator that we've been building relationships with. So we're connected with other accelerators in the US and in Canada, and we're essentially setting these teams up for a successful admission into one of those programs so that they can then go on to the next level. And ultimately, our vision is to then, in the future, create our own accelerator that takes them at that sort of second stage. But yeah, so that's essentially where we're helping them now. And as Shay alluded to, we're providing them with education on how to be great leaders, how to be great entrepreneurs, how to market your idea, how to develop your brand strategy. And then we're also supporting them with kind of the more technical things like getting their accounting set up, getting their legal set up, and so on.
Perfect. So obviously, just to kind of bring it back to the whole backers thing. So you guys are obviously raising capital for FCSB on the backers platform. You have a raise that's open right now on the backers platform, so people can check that out, obviously, through our partners, 108 Securities Inc. So tell us a little bit about, what it is that, or why, I guess, somebody that's watching right now would want to or should potentially look at investing in FCSB, and what they're going to get out of it. What is the value they're getting, and what are they investing in? What is it that they're investing in? Why is it a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
A great idea, I guess. Why is it a great idea? Why is it the most amazing idea possible for somebody right now today?
Well, for everyday people, it's very rare, if not impossible, for you to get in on the ground floor of angel investing, essentially, into these startups like FCSB is, and that you would then be part owner of, as well as owning a piece of an actual physical private accelerator and incubator. So people know what these are. Like, we're not reinventing the wheel by any means. There's tons of, like J Labs, Mars, Creative Destructive Lab. There's tons of different accelerators and incubators in the world. And what we're doing is so niched in an industry that's primed and ready to take off and growing 3 times faster than robotics. And it's an extremely economically, return on investment wise, feasible investment for you to make. And then also, you get to actually see hands-on where your investment is going into developing the next generation of entrepreneurs. So that's very rare. You can't go to these other accelerators or incubators and become a part owner. And that's really important to us to give people that opportunity, because we believe that the startups that we're investing into and the solutions that they're making are so important for the world. They are going to impact climate change, food security, and being more sustainable solutions than currently exist. So if those are things that you actually care about, you want to see a greener future, you want to see more products on the market that reflect your own values, then FCSB is a place where you can now own a piece of a company that is doing just that. And Samir, you can expand on that if you'd like.
Samir, give us your 2 cents for sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, but to add to that, we're also raising money through more traditional means. So we're applying for grants. We're talking to private investors. We're looking at sponsors, things like that. This crowdfunding mechanism, like Shay mentioned, is really a way for us to express our own values, where we believe that everyday people should have the opportunity to get access to this kind of investment opportunity. And yeah, we just really wanted to sort of democratize that access, give people a chance to get in on this massively important industry.
I think a good clarifying fact too is that by investing in FCSB right now, our operating co, we're looking to make our first 2 investments this year. And so by virtue of investing in FCSB, you then also are a owner of our portfolio startups as well. So we're a facilitator. We essentially become your fund manager of the portfolio of startups that go through our programs as well. So it's an extremely kind of hierarchy of return on investment through FCSB and the startups that we work with.
Right. So investing in you guys is like an investment in the organizations that you're investing in. Interesting.
And
Cool.
as you know, Justin, and as your company's name reflects, crowdfunding is more than just a fundraising mechanism. It's also a way to engage your fan base and build a fan base. These people who are then going to be invested in the success of your company and going to share your vision with the rest of the world, spread the message, and so on, be champions for you. And that's something that we're very interested in. Like Shay said, we're trying to tackle issues that everyone cares about. So it's something that we think we can really harness that sort of passion that people have for creating a better future.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. Well, we'll end it sort of here. What do you guys have any sort of final statements? Actually, just before we end it, so we're going to be back tomorrow and I believe on Thursday as well. And so tomorrow, either one of you, Shay or Samir, are going to run through the investor deck for FCSB, and so people can tune in tomorrow, get a run through of the investor deck. You can kind of go through it. If people have any questions, they can definitely drop a line below here and we can answer that tomorrow, or they can answer while we're on tomorrow. And then I think the following day, we're going to do a bit of an AMA, Ask Me Anything. So hopefully people can start putting some questions down below, start maybe sending them in, reach out. Obviously, you can get to the investment opportunity at app.backers.ca, or you can go to the FCSB website and you can get in through there, and they've got a link through to the opportunity. So we'll end it, but I want to give you guys one last word. Is there anything you guys want to say? I'll go with Shay first. She's sort of, let's see, what is your final words today, and then we'll see everyone again tomorrow. What are your thoughts, Shay? How do we want to end it?
Final words. Just thanks for having us, and I think if you're interested in any of the opportunities that we talked about today, there's a lot more information on our website as well about the possibility of synthetic biology and what FCSB does. So I'd say check out our website.
Perfect. And Samir, I appreciate you kind of reiterating the value of backers and sort of that you guys see that same value. So, I mean, we obviously love what you guys are doing. We're sort of the step sort of to get to you guys, and facilitate people participating in what you guys are doing. So what are sort of your final thoughts to everyone watching, aside from go invest in FCSB, right? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Shay said before about just how rare this kind of opportunity is to get in on an industry that's just about to blow up. So just imagine you're, in the 90s, right when the computing industry was just about to, release the internet and turn into the massive .com era. That's kind of where we are with synthetic biology. We're right on the brink of this industry that's going to absolutely transform not just one aspect of our lives, but several. And being able to get in on that and not just invest in an early stage company, but also get in on a portfolio of companies that are going to be in this industry is just so incredibly rare. And so we're really excited to be extending this opportunity to everyday people, and we're happy to talk with anyone who has any more questions or would like to learn more. Cool.
I guess quickly, where can they find you guys? Give us websites, social media, where can people connect with you guys to kind of, ask questions as well? Obviously on LinkedIn, but where else? Yeah, LinkedIn at ForestSynBio. We're on Facebook and Instagram, also ForestSynBio. We're on Twitter at FC_SynBio. And you can email either of us at our first name at fcsb.ca. And of course, our website, fcsb.ca.
Yeah, if you sign up to our mailing list, it will directly send you a link to set up a meeting with us as well. Perfect. Awesome. So shout out to FCSB. Go connect with these guys. Samir, Shay, thank you very much for joining me. Everyone else, appreciate you guys joining us. If you're looking to raise capital for your business, connect with us, obviously backers. If you want to be like Shay and Samir, raising capital for your business, be sure to check us out. And if you're looking to participate in their round, be sure to check their opportunity out as well. Everyone else, I thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you guys. We'll see you guys again tomorrow, right? We're going to be back here again tomorrow. So we'll see you guys. Bye.
So it's kind of our bye. You guys ever seen PTI? Bye.
Bye.